My audience will be really familiar with the ASPI experts we have on this show. It's an Australian Strategic Policy Institute, I think set up in the Howard era, but certainly supported by both sides of government, and really serious senior politicians are often appointed onto its board. I am concerned, we've just gone through this removal of our spy chiefs from the National Security Committee of Cabinet. I am concerned now to hear that Labor's ordered this big review into ASPI. We know that the Chinese can't bear ASPI. It looks to me like a review you have when you want to shut them down. Am I wrong?
Oh, Peter, I'm worried that it's called Investigation into the Strategic Policy Work. And it sounds very much like a Yes Minister attempt to defund ASPI. That would be terrible, and it would be further evidence of the government's blindness to criticism of China. Remember, with the downgrading of ASIO, ASIO had just previously warned about foreign interference, i.e. China's effect in Australia. So Glyn Davis, the person who was described on Sharry's program the other night, is the head of Albo's office, and I'm worried that he's assuming the role that Sir Horace Wilson did for Neville Chamberlain. But over China policy, not over policy towards Germany. Defang
us, basically. That's what it is, isn't it?
No Pizzullo, no ASIO.
Calamity of errors in immigration, taking out the NSC, as of the ASIS boss and the ASIO boss from NSC. All of that, I think, is incredibly concerning. Talk to me about this issue with the bond and Donald Trump. I mean, you don't find $400 million down the back of the couch, but I mean, if he hasn't got that bond to post, this is the New York civil case, what's going to happen from here on in? How's it play out?
It's really quite perverse. So from a legal perspective, he is appealing that. It'll probably be on the basis of the 8th Amendment, which says you cannot have excessive bail or inflict cruel and unusual punishment on people. So it'll go up to that. This will look very disproportional to what the conviction is about and what others in the same jurisdiction had been subject to. However, that takes time as it runs its way up the court system. And so he has to post this bond. If he's unable to, because he doesn't have that kind of liquidity, then they will seize his assets, potentially. That's the legal side. Wow. The political side is, this just looks more and more outrageous. They're doing the unthinkable, which is he's a very unlikable figure to many people, but they're making him empathetic. And just as context, I'll leave you with this and your viewers with this, that O.J. Simpson, who was also convicted famously in the civil case, he wasn't found guilty in the criminal case, his judgment was $33 million, which in today's terms is $66 million for murdering 2 human beings. And here we're looking at $450 plus million for a crime that there were no victims in, because the banks were not even the plaintiffs. It was the state of New York. So the whole thing reeks to a lot of people, including to Trump haters. It's not a good look.
What's happening with Biden and Netanyahu, their relationship, the dynamic over this Rafah issue?
Well, Biden's backed Chuck Schumer, who made a speech in the US Senate basically saying that there should be regime change in Israel. Netanyahu's shot back saying, we're a sovereign country, we're not a banana republic, we're going to destroy the last 4 battalions of bitter enders in Rafah. Now, the Israelis have a responsibility to make sure that the Palestinian civilians in that area are shifted out to the beach area and housed properly and fed properly. But we wouldn't have said to General Montgomery or Eisenhower that we can't go to Berlin, we've got halfway across Germany, we ought to stop now. So they're a sovereign country, they'll make their own decisions. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu. Gantz, the leader of the opposition, has said that there should be a decision made by the Israelis, not in the American Senate.
What are we seeing in the Portuguese election that seems to be playing out right across Europe? This is really interesting.
It is interesting. I think it's the battle line of the last half century, these liberal democracies, or Western democracies, I should say. You've got sort of the right, center-right party has taken, or the coalition has come into power after a long time, but ascendant in that is this populist group that has gained seats substantially. You see the same trend in Sweden and Finland and the Netherlands, even in Germany and France with Marine Le Pen and all of that. They're ascendant, either winning outright or gaining a big share. And that is because of all the reasons we know. I think the immigration is the biggest fault line over here, changing the demographics of these countries. The rural part of the electorate is feeling disenfranchised. And as you see that momentum, it's sort of a counterweight to the leftward drift of these countries. They're gaining bigger share of the EU as well, and they're going to have more influence on policy that comes out of that. And I think you're just going to see more of that shift and that battle line sharpening.
Just quickly, Michael, I mean, the rise of, I guess, the right more broadly across Europe, I think is shaking people up, particularly when you look at what's happened with Ukraine and a steeliness coming out of Europe.
A lot of the far right are funded by Putin. Mrs. Le Pen's party got a huge €35 million loan from Putin, which hasn't been repaid, I've noted. But I'm not as down on Europe as other people are. 20 of the 32 countries are now on 2%. Poland's got more tanks than a dozen countries in Europe, and 3%. The Czechs are collecting 1,155mm shells all over the world for the Ukrainians. So I think the Ukrainians, with European help, will be able to defend themselves, even if the Americans and Trump cut them loose.
I think most of it who's been to London, we know the V&A, the Victorian Albert Museum, but they've gone after Thatcher, and this has caused a huge ruckus in London.
It has. I think when everybody's racist and villainous, then nobody's racist and villainous. So they're just throwing everybody in there. They're lumping her in with Osama bin Laden and Hitler, which is bizarre. And the thing with comedy is it has to be an equal opportunity offender. When it's always in one direction, criticizing heroes of one side, it's no longer funny, and it's a lost art form. It's
not funny at all. Princess Kate, we saw a glimmer of her. I think we've got some vision there on the screen. We saw a glimmer of her out today, putting paid to this idea that she's in a hospital bed, on coma or on life support, and all the sort of conspiracy theories that run around. I feel for her when she eventually comes back into the public square, Michael. She's going to be hounded, isn't she?
She is, and I like a lot of commentators on this network, I can't understand the huge offence that people were caused by her presenting of that photo. I mean, she did a bit of editing.
What person at the age of 40 doesn't edit a photograph? Anyway, I've got to leave it there.